based on a paper sack journal that Angie had made for Heather at Ruby and Pearl, and I loved how simple it was, but at the same time very functional. Instead of filling it with ledger papers, I filled it with recipes and some tasting cards. So here's a really quick flip through. Okay, so like I mentioned, Angie had sent Heather an Easter journal, and it was made using paper sacks or a wax paper bag. So I actually found a craft paper bag from one of my purchases, probably from Michael's or something, and it was a little bit taller. So this is roughly about 8.5 tall, and I folded it in half, and then I went ahead and added quite a few pages from actual ledger paper and recipe booklets, and then I secured the side with some vintage grosgrain French ribbon, and I'll just untie it really quickly here. This is just some fabric rope that was used for one of my gifts, and I've also used a little bit of cotton and silk twine art piece on the cover that Donna Morgan sent me. She said she believes it's a photocopy of an art piece in France that Aline Covine had sent her, and I've been wanting to use it. It's just a piece, a photocopied piece, but I backed it with some ledger paper and a little bit of magnet and Velcro here just to soften it. And then I made this a journaling spot and a little pocket tuck because I didn't want to cover up the antique French Vespers and music sheet paper that I received from Nia, a brown paper parcel, and all the vintage laces that I've been using from Sam Poole and from Catherine at French Biaudou. So you'll see the layers of Ruby and Pearl's XO's authentic vintage wallpapers. I love brown and I love orange and I love fall. Fall is my all-time favorite. I put a vintage greeting card, Victorian greeting card in there, and an authentic recipe card for chicken sauté a la Orange Grove. And actually, these recipes I really do intentionally look for wine pairings when I go to friends' houses. I ask them for their menus, and then I go out and I do wine tastings on my own or champagne tastings, and I work with a local wine cave or a champagne cave to find specific menu pairings for their menus. And that's why I'm calling this Harvest Hostess. Someone who maybe loves to cook or lives to cook and looks for the perfect pairing and actually plans out their tastings or their menus based on their wine cellar. And also one day I just want to be able to eat and drink my way through Europe. So anyway, so that's the outside. I've been wanting to use this piece of art forever. Thank you, Don Morgan. And thank you to Sam Poole and Catherine for all of the vintage French laces that you gave me. I finally was able to use them. So you'll see most of the laces kind of peeking out, just like the sack that Angie had made. But here's the original sack that I was going to use. This is from Denise's shop. It's that wax paper sack. But this one, if I folded it in half, would have been a little too tiny, just based on some of the recipe booklets and pages that I had. And I didn't want it to get too small. And like I said, I do take the wine tastings pretty seriously. But I did stuff this sack with quite a few journaling cards or recipe cards, so that as you're going through and you're actually planning your menu, you have enough space to write down or share recipes. Or if this is a hostess gift, you can actually share some of your own private or your own top recipes with your friends before gifting this. So I actually love gifting hostess gifts. In addition to a food or a wine pairing that I give them, I love sharing recipes or little fancy cards, or in this case, a fancy recipe booklet. So this sack just has extra journaling cards for you. These are all Ruby and Pearl's digitals, but I love the antique and fall colors. So that'll go right in this front pocket here, which is the first, the open flap, and a couple of extra ribbons in case you want to tie off some of your recipes that you'll be gifting. Goes right in there, and this is actually a vintage or antique Edwardian charm that came off of something. I just went to a flea market and they had some random bits and pieces like that piece that I had on my niece's book corner. It was just a one-of-a-kind Edwardian book corner. This one happens to be a leaf, so I specifically bought it, not realizing that I still had this art piece and this black vintage French trim from Miab at a brown paper pretzel. You're probably going to hear these names a lot because they're my go-to French contacts. So on the inside, in addition to this Victorian card I didn't show you, I backed Ruby and Pearl's vintage fabric digitals with this wine tasting cards. Actually, it's a wine tasting placemat menu, but I cut it into 6 tags so that if you are planning your dinner party or a gift, or you go to a wine tasting party, you actually have a bookmark for each wine. And you can go through this flips pretty easily, or you can just remove each one, and they have a really pretty backing. And this is that Silk and Willow eco-dyed ribbon that I love so much. It is so luxurious. I can't even believe I bought it. It's usually meant for weddings or something really special, but I think food is really special, and going to dinner parties is special. So that is magnetized, closes right there so it doesn't fall about if it's in your junk drawer or your recipe drawer. On the inside, of course, because I always have to, I lined it with Ledger and vintage French booklet magazine pages, a Hostess, serving tea after dinner probably. And then this is a French lady who I imagined to be my grandmother or a grandmother when she was younger. Originally I thought this was going to be grandma's recipes, but then once the wine pairings came into play and the fall colors, I decided to make it the Hostess with the Mostess. So she's from 1921, official postcard, and I think I got this one from Catherine at French Biaudou, and I took a craft envelope and made it a page and put some script writing in there, French script writing, but you can replace that with a recipe or a gift card or a special note, or you can put your note in the front pocket. On the back I do have an authentic grandmother who is from the 1960s or 50s. 12 blue ribbon recipes you want to try. And actually, I should really photocopy this because I do want to try the banana bread. I love banana bread. Scalloped chicken, sugar cookies. I love sugar cookies. And currant bread, salmon patties, cheese bread, apricot preserves. Yum, who doesn't want that during the fall? Celery relish, peach cobbler. I've been eating peach pie for 2 weeks straight since it's in season here. Plum butter, carrot cucumber relish. I mean, all of this I would definitely pair with the right champagne or wine, and of course you have to do your homework before throwing or pairing any type of food. But this is actually a piece of ephemera that I got from Sheena Lunar Mozu since I was going through her journals. And then there's a little pocket where you can change out that little script with an actual recipe. A lot of vintage ephemera in here, and I'll list the sellers from Etsy below. But you've got your ice coupons, your school milk coupons, playing cards with kitchen appliances from Westinghouse, some extra ledger paper, and then of course your vintage French pockets and tucks that I've used and whatnot. And then this is actually a short page where I just magnetized this envelope that I received from someone. Hid the magnet behind the stamps so you could hear it click. Found the coupons, so these, you could put your coupons or your recipes and hide them in there and float this anywhere. But I really like that brown color, and I just like it floating about with the oranges and the browns. And of course, it just looked really good layered with the Hostess, with the Mostess on the cover there. Wine tasting guide. I did give you a full double-sided page in case you are pretty serious about wine tasting and finding the right pairings for your dinner, or during the dinner if you're hosting a wine tasting event. I love these. I actually do take them home before I invest in any type of wine or champagne because they're expensive. Coffee stain paper is what it's printed on. And then all the pages are actually, instead of ledger, authentic antique and vintage recipe book pages. So I tried to choose ones that would actually be great for fall harvest or fall dinners, or even into Christmas. Fried beets, carrots, sweet potato, croquettes, scalloped onions, cabbage. I do have this vintage or now antique grocery receipt, and I had to trim it with some of Sam Poole's antique lace, of course. And on the back you have plenty of space for recipes if you want to gift this as a recipe booklet, or as an actual grocery list after you've planned your menu. Some of these recipe pages from the Calumet recipe booklet that I have. It's from the early 1900s. Bread, biscuits, and shortbreads, of course. You need that for every dinner. Nut bread, raisin breads. I love fall. Of course, I love pumpkin anything, and this is actually a pumpkin seed envelope, so you could actually tuck, I put just a scorecard in there, but you could tuck, you know, another secret family recipe that you want to gift or share with your friend, or that you'll be serving as a menu item, and then set a special lemon custard pie. I mean, I don't have to read all the recipes for you, but I feel like I want to because I love food and wine pairings and champagne pairings. More of the vintage or antique lace trims from Sam and or Catherine. I think this one was Sam Poole's. There's a cute little chubby cherub from Calumet baking soda. This is a digital from Ruby and Pearls. It's vegetables. Don't forget to plan your vegetables. Vegetables do go really well with certain champagnes. Certain varietals aren't too yeasty, or in this case, this one was actually a little salty, so it went with sushi and it went really great with desserts. But it also has a beginner's palate as well. It's not overgorged. It's just right for that beginner taster. House rolls, omelets. These are antique book pages from these recipe and home life booklets where they had recipes and life-saving tips on diphtheria or kidney complaints. Some of that pink wax paper. And then Grandma's. This is why I originally thought it was going to be Grandma's cookbook, but there are pages from Grandma's cookbook in here. Raised graham biscuits, sour milk biscuits, cream biscuits. Wow, I should have probably taken copies of all of these. So this is just to go in front of this because it's a pretty brittle page, and I just love the pink and the maroons. The French page, I just like the offset of the blue-green with the browns just to give it a little splash of color, and because this little vintage recipe card had a little bit of blue, oranges, and browns, so just wanted that to kind of blend its way. And then this is one of Ruby and Pearl's digitals. I just love brown, maroons, reds, and I just made it a trifold so that you can write more recipes or plan out a menu before your event if you're the hostess or the mostess, and some vintage German ledger paper and a lace pocket. Put the turkey up. A few more recipes that were pretty brittle, but I really felt like they were really good ones, like this drawn butter or cream sauce, and then some notes on really antique ledger and book page paper, French, but I just stuck them on one of these little tabs so that they can float about. Ledger paper, this one is Spanish. More antique ledger paper that I didn't want to waste any space, so if there's any ledger paper, you can write a recipe, you can write a note, or you can journal. But really, if this is going to a harvest hostess, I would expect her or you to help her or him fill the recipe, fill the pages. This is another one of these short pages, short ledger pages, but I added a Boston Store tea room receipt and one of those playing cards with the perfect 1950s or 60s kitchen, of course, with the green countertops and the plaid tartan trim above, and then the grandmothers, because everyone needs a grandmother's picture or postcard in their vintage and antique recipe booklets. And I got this off eBay because if you don't drink tea, then you have the right coffee with the right dessert at your wine tasting or your dinner. An antique doily, this I got from Donna Morgan as well. It just went too perfectly. If I had a recipe for tea biscuits or tea cookies or tea sandwiches, I would have put it here, but I don't. But if you do, definitely, if you're going to use this as a gift for someone for Thanksgiving or fall harvest, you could add those recipes there. A lot of room, a lot of ledger paper, a wine label that I got from Sam Poole in her little happy mail to me, an authentic frozen pumpkin pie recipe from someone's personal recipe booklet, and Hollywood pie. The reason I'm pairing these is because for every pie there is a wine pairing. Perfect, there always is. never fails. You just have to do your homework. And so this layout here, again, Ruby and Pearls Bohemian, I love this brown. I printed it to cardstock because on the back, if you are the hostess planning your wine party or your dinner party, in theory, you're testing your wines and then you're writing out your menu. So one of the cards is actually just a blank, or almost nearly blank, vintage British ledger paper, backed on this cardstock, which originally is just a wine tasting. And then you do your menu and your wine pairing together. And then you could just clip that and call it your menu for the night. I just thought that was pretty. And this is actually an orange silk from Honey Silks. So even though I love, my new favorite is this Silk and Willow, I do have some from Honey Silks as well, just because they had some complementary pumpkin colors. So that, the frozen pumpkin pie, and the perfect wine pairing, and you could call it a great party immediately. A delicious strawberry shortbread recipe booklet on this French page, blue on blue, and a little bit of blue wallpaper from Donna Morgan. But strawberry shortcake, even though it's more of a summer dessert, the peach shortcake sounds good actually, and apricot shortcake for fall. And especially if you caramelize it with some brown, caramelize or burn your sugar a little bit, I think that'll taste delicious, especially maybe with a warm brandy for dessert. So you could tell everything's about a pairing for me. I'm surprised I haven't met someone who's a winemaker or owns his own vineyard, because I would be helping harvest. In fact, I want to go back to France and help harvest during September, October. That's usually when I go back there. Back of that, raisin pie. This is curious, but I did pair it with a pie bakery receipt, and of course your fresh milk tab. All these are authentic pieces of ephemera. I love people's handwriting. Pineapple meringue pie. Ooh, I'm gonna make a copy of this one. Oh gosh, okay. So many things to try, and I don't even really like to cook, but I love desserts and I love good dinner parties. Morton salt tablet paper. I love this thin tablet paper. For those who know, I love my fountain pen. More digital from Ruby and Pearl. It was just some extra paper that I was testing on coffee stain paper. But I loved how vintage that looked. It's one of her early fabric digital designs. And I just love the color palette on there. And so this is just a little tuck made with some of that gold paper. Pears, peaches, canning. So this is actually pretty brittle, so I didn't sew it in or glue it in. So it's just floating in this little tuck here. But I think canning is especially important during the fall, during harvest, last you through the winter into spring. And they make great gifts for people if you're going to a dinner party. The back of the vegetable digital from Heather's digital. I'll try to figure out which one that is. This is one of the floating book page pockets that I made watching Heather Ruby and Pearl Exo's book page tutorial, which I'll link below. I put some authentic tickets in there, a gallon of milk receipt, actually tag. And I topped it with some of this cotton and silk twine. Has two pockets, so one in the back, one front. And then I magnetized it just so it could be used as a bookmark. Has some authentic, is this French? No. Swedish ephemera. And then some of that little miniature coffee stained envelope that I got in that little half tuck. I didn't glue it down just so you can use it more as a tuck. In Heather's tutorial, you could go all the way here, but these book pages were short. Some of the antique laces from Sam Poole, and the magnet is hidden here somewhere. And then there's that back tuck there. Just it does actually have authentic tickets, which is getting sticky, so I should probably stick that down. And then cream of tartar sticker, which I went ahead and stuck down. And then another recipe for brown sauce and fresh mushroom sauce. So everything that I put in here was intentional. Recipes, food, wine pairings. And it ties back on this short page here. Or anywhere, actually. Let's put it on this bigger page, just so it doesn't cover up the other recipes. See, these magnets can be really strong, so you have to remember where you put them. There we you go. And then this could just float about as a magnet book marker. Calumet book page. Oh, these are some random vintage postcards, receipts from Pennsylvania, vintage and or antique. I love the handwriting, the French script writing and calligraphy, so I thought maybe you could collage with that or use it as a backdrop to one of your recipes. This is a postcard that I was going to use as just a recipe card, but then I ended up making it more of a tag looking with some of the leftover pieces of French wallpaper from Ruby and Pearl XO, and then some of this silk from Silk and Willow. I can tell because their silk is slightly thicker. Or actually, no, is this the Honey Silks? This is the Honey Silks. Honey Silks has a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, just a little more rustic looking to their silks, whereas Silk and Willow is a little bit more fine woven. Anyway, Coca-Cola ledger piece. I think that would be great for recipes or grocery lists. A lot of these are floating just in case you need to run to the grocery last minute. I just love these silk ribbons and the color complements. Ideal combinations. This is actually a funny page, but it's pretty true. What goes with chicken and which vegetables, turkey, which vegetables, goose, which vegetables, and or other pairings that you could do. So not just with food pairing or wine pairing or champagne, but there really is a complement to everything that we're eating. I don't eat or drink just to eat or drink. Here we go. More of the pairings and notes. This is a prescription pharmacy page, so it probably had the recipes on the other side. But, oh, here, I chose it for the salads. Don't forget your vegetables. And then this is a vintage playing card with the vegetables on it. I love peas and pea salads, especially fresh ones that are just picked and so crispy. I never thought peas would be so yummy, but here's a good salad dressing without oil. Oh, orange salad. And I think this booklet was from the 1910s or 20s, so I don't remember. It doesn't have the year on here anymore, but they kept things simple. Really great taste. More of that vintage ledger, British ledger. Just a French advertisement, but I love the gourds, the black and white gourds along the border there. I got that from Marie at French Manufacture. She loves to send me little things that I could fussy cut or just use as advertisements. This is an authentic French payment receipt. It's pretty tall, so I did fold it, and it's pretty brittle, but you can see they paid off their bill. How much was it? $3.78, and then you can see when it was paid in 1913, it looks like. And since it was brittle, I just put it on the very back of the booklet. You know, the bag, the bottom of the bag. I did not open it to make it a pocket, but instead I made it a flip tuck to put this giant receipt on there with a tab so you don't, tear at it too much. And then I made a tuck out of the ledger paper that I lined the bag with, and I put some scrap ledger paper from France because I love the quality for fountain pen inks. This is an antique page that didn't make it in one of my recipe booklets because you can see how old it is and frail. So I backed it with some coffee stained paper so that you could actually make it a recipe card if you want, or just a nice layering piece. And then some of these Grand Magazine from the Louvre calendar pages. I ordered a whole book of this from France, and I love this quality of paper. So there's fall, harvest, September. You can make this your recipe pages or your lists for planning. And then there's the vintage ledger paper on the back lining the actual bag. Here's the back. So I did wrap the whole bag on the outside with this antique French Vespers music page. I bought a book, a Vespers booklet from Miab at a brown paper parcel, and it was probably 50 kilograms or whatever the maximum limit is to ship from France without having to go through a special shipper. But I'm determined to use every single page, and they're so worn. And that's why I left the front open, so that you could actually see how distressed and how old these music pages are. And they're old tape. They used almost like it's maybe a paper tape. So that's what's on the inside. Oops, along with the recipe cards. So that is the little Hostess gift. And I'm gonna go ahead and put this on Etsy. I'm gonna make it fairly, a decent price, just so you can make it your own, or you can gift it with, maybe a special jam that you've made or a special food. And then maybe you can even, if you're the type who likes to give gift wines or champagnes, do a little bit of homework and find your pairings. Or you can host your own wine tasting event. But thanks for sticking with me through this quick flip through. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things, back into life, and back into being creative. So baby steps, but I do have a few more things planned. So hopefully I can get 2 more Hostess gifts made. They won't be the harvest one because there's only one of these that I have. But they will be authentic ephemera and recipes. And then I have the wine tasting book and journal. And then I have a Paris Gardens journal and a Laura Ingalls Wilder journal that I'm supposed to be making. So hopefully I can get myself back into an artsy and artistic mood and shape. So anyway, thanks, and I will see you guys soon.